Welcome to the Legion Outriders Podcast.
You've got a lot of guts coming here.
Your source for the latest Legion news, opinion, and analysis.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
And now, here's your hosts.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
John Archiquette.
Will somebody get this big walking carpet out of my way?
Matt Turner.
I'm not afraid.
And Joshua Gray.
You will be.
You're listening to the Legion Outrider Podcast here from bright, sunny Las Vegas, our hive of scum and villainy, if you will. I'm your host, John Archiquette, here with my good friends Joshua Gray and Matt Turner. What's going on, guys?
Hello.
And we're here at Power 9 Games here in North Las Vegas. It's a pretty exciting day because we're starting off our first podcast about Star Wars Legion. It's a game that all three of us are looking forward to, and we all come from different various aspects of wargaming. So I think one thing we all have in common, though, is we're all pretty big Star Wars fans.
Wait, I thought you said Star Trek. No, of course, Star Wars, yes.
This isn't the last Starfighter?
No.
Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, well, I think you're a few decades too late for that one, but yeah. No, I mean, all of us, I believe, have been to see all the movies. We're excited for the Star Wars property, and I know when I started out playing 40K 15 some odd years ago, I was always hoping for some sort of Star Wars version of that I could field instead of painting my Space Marines to look like stormtroopers and whatnot. So very excited for this one. I've been going through most of the gaming systems since then, like War Machine, X-Wing, and some others. But no, this getting in on the ground floor of Legion got me super hyped.
So, Josh, where do you come from with gaming?
So I'm kind of like the accidental wargamer, right? I've always been a PC gamer, video games, stuff like that. But I've always really loved a lot of the tabletop properties on PC, like BattleTech and 40K and things like that. Read all the books and get into all the games. But I've always been put off by painting and then just the time it takes to play a game of 40K or the hobby aspect of it. And then I had a friend who introduced me to X-Wing. And it all changed from there.
X-Wing, that gateway drug.
Yeah, X-Wing, it was the gateway into plastic crack. So I got into wargaming or tabletop gaming with that. It's a pretty compact game as far as how long it takes to play a game, things like that. And it didn't require any hobby aspects to it.
But you did start painting.
But then I started painting, and I found out I'm like, hey, I suck at this, but I enjoy it. So so I decided to, when they announced Legion, I was kind of actually, to be perfectly honest, kind of about it based on just those first initial preview articles. But then as stuff started coming out about it, I was like, hey, this looks like this is going to be really good. And of course, like Matt mentioned, huge Star Wars fan. And at the time I was kind of dabbling as to whether I really wanted to make that jump into 40K. And then as some of the preview articles started coming out, I'm like, nah, I'm good over here, thanks. So I decided to get on the ground floor of Legion, and man, I could not be more excited.
Kicking and screaming the entire way.
Not at this point. No, not kicking and screaming at all. It's I'm on board, but I know some of us are FFG fanboys.
Hello.
I'm kind of a frenemy of FFG, so I'm cautiously optimistic about the game, but really excited to see what it holds.
Cool.
So you kind of came from a complete opposite spectrum standpoint for me because I came into it as a hobbyist for many years. I'd say about 15 years ago is when I first actually started painting and went through some Warhammer Fantasy, some 40K stuff, but I don't think I actually put any models on the table and played a game until about 4 or 5 years ago. And I have armies that are sitting on my shelf for a number of game systems that have never actually seen a tabletop.
Sure, far more beautiful than anything I've been able to put out and never get to see any play.
But either way, I mean, it doesn't matter if you don't actually get it on the tabletop. But I've gone through a couple different gaming systems, though. I played Warhammer Fantasy, 40K, Bolt Action, some historical stuff, and then X-Wing too, but not quite to the level that you have. I've never done it competitively, but I got a few ships sitting around at home. Star Wars Legion, I think, kind of brings a lot of the best of a lot of those worlds together. It brings the Star Wars mythos, these iconic characters that we've all kind of grown up with, along with some of the gaming systems within 40K and Bolt Action that I think that really make it come to life.
I'm thinking that Fantasy Flight is this is going to be probably one of the more accessible tabletop battle strategy games that are out there. 40K has definitely made strides with 8th edition, making it a lot easier for people to jump in. I think Fantasy Flight's just getting it to that next level. So you won't see people messing around with tape measures, things like that look kind of like, well, what's that going on? They'll see little maneuver tools, little range rulers, and it's pretty clear pretty quickly to people that you might be demoing what's going on there.
Yeah, there's a lot of mechanics you can see that they've kind of picked and chose from other games. Some things that have worked, some things that maybe didn't work as well in other games that they've kind of honed and crafted into their own way. That I don't know. We haven't got a chance to play the game yet, so we haven't seen how well it actually works out. But I'm optimistic.
Beyond some demos or whatnot, but yeah, only a couple more weeks, and then we'll have our hands on our own little preview copies. Yay!
Now, in the meantime, we do have some other Star Wars news, some things that are coming out with Star Wars. What are we looking at in the next couple weeks?
Oh, well, coming up in the near horizon, the second half of the last season of Rebels is out, and I finally did get to watch it, Josh, and oh my God, wow,
right?
Yeah, that's
whoa, that just happened.
We'll see. They still got some episodes to wrap up with, but it's pretty interesting. Other than that, we know that Solo is going to be Memorial Weekend, or as I'm calling it, the Lando movie. So, yeah.
I mean, who saw Donald Glover being cast as Lando Calrissian and didn't get excited about it?
No,
right? Oh man,
and just the little bit of the screen captures and pictures and the little trailers we've seen, he looks totally awesome. But yeah, I'm hoping he kind of steals the show. But I'm cautiously optimistic that it's going to be a good movie.
Worst case scenario, it's got Chewbacca.
Yeah. I mean,
so you can't go wrong with a movie with Chewbacca.
And if you don't like it, it'll pull your arms out of your sockets, probably. But other than that, they announced the Last Jedi Blu-ray is going to be on March 27th. Looks like there's going to be tons of extras on there. So if you're like me and like to go through all those behind-the-scenes stuff, looks like there's going to be a lot of stuff in there. But
it'll be out just in time for you to paint all your miniatures, and you can have that on, and that'll be great.
That's exactly what I'm looking forward to, because I might not be the biggest fan of that movie, but it'll be something I can have playing in the background while I'm painting. That's really all I want.
Okay, cool. But yeah, that's about it for Star Wars news right now.
Awesome. So one of the things that we're also going to do with our Legion Outrider podcast is bring up some hobby segments, because I'm pretty much forcing you guys to do that.
Hobby John wants to talk about hobby stuff. That's
weird. My hobby time.
Well, FFG is actually forcing us to talk about it too, because you got to have the hobby aspect. Whether you're going to go through and commission somebody to paint for you, or you got to paint your own. It'll
be ranks upon ranks of gray ATSTs.
Right.
Yeah. No, they're painted. How do you tell? Yeah.
Well, I think it's one thing that's a big change of pace from X-Wing. Is X-Wing, everything comes pre-painted and you don't really have terrain, whereas with any other tabletop war game, terrain is essentially a part of the game. You need to factor that in when you're playing. So the game comes with a few little barricades here and there, which play a big part as far as cover tokens or anything like that.
Oh sure. But, yeah. So what are you working on? Since I know this is kind of sailing to the point.
I'm excited. I'm putting together a Tatooine battlefield for the demo set here for the store.
Nice.
And I've been pillaging Michael's, going through Home Depot, Target to pick up Tupperware. There's a lot of little things that you can use to turn into buildings that you might look at and say, like, well, that doesn't work for terrain. But no, like it's all basically what you can come up with in your mind. As creative as you want to be.
Throw some spackle on it and maybe stick an antenna out the top, and
Absolutely.
Suddenly it's in a galaxy far, far away.
And there's so many diverse planets and so much topography that you can work with the Star Wars universe that, you're only limited by your own imagination. You want, Mustafar, you can do that if you want to do...
Well, yeah. Just everything, the walkway is all breaking into the lava flows. That'd be interesting to see if we could rig up. But yeah, no, you could do Endor or the forest moon of Endor. I don't think you want to be on Endor itself. But a Tatooine is an obvious one. As you said, Mustafar. Hoth. I'm sure we're going to do a Hoth table here for that.
Josh, what terrain are you basing your guys with?
Well, as far as terrain goes, we're going to be fighting on the planet Captain Crunch. Because I have no skill at anything like that, so I'm basically going to be like cereal boxes, and I'm basically going to go go to Walmart and we're gonna play with our food before we actually put it away.
The soup can is a transmission tower.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing. So basically, the upshot of that is I'm going to be playing on whatever you bring. Honestly, so yeah, I have no skill for that. I'm barely good enough at painting the minis.
We'll get you there. Don't worry,
we'll get there. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think my dream board is if I can make a Bespin Cloud City.
Oh, that'd be
like
sweet.
Indoor kind of map. Oh,
I think I want to work on like a Scarif Beach.
That would be really cool.
If they ever come up with some shore trooper models, which I'm sure they will, maybe put some Hawaiian shirts on them or something. Just have them out there enjoying their
you
push assignment.
You can always paint up your stormtroopers that way.
No, I'm going to wait for the shore troopers.
I
think stormtroopers should be stormtroopers.
If someone makes a Tom Selleck stormtrooper.
Oh, man.
Luke just has the mustache. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
That sounds horrifying. Don't anybody do that, please. Oh, man.
But there's a really cool website I found, or a Facebook group that I found, too. It's a Star Wars Legion unofficial, in quotations, terrain group. And they have all kinds of pictures and tutorials from other users who just getting creative with random household items and making their own terrain.
I mean, since there's no official terrain for Legion, branding yourself unofficial seems kind of unnecessary. But hey, no, that's awesome. It's always good to have an idea of what other people are working on, get yourself inspired, and hey, maybe I should give that a try.
Just a random question. Does anybody know how the Legion models are going to scale with like the scale train sets that are out there right now? Because obviously you're not going to have stormtroopers going down Main Street, USA, like you see a lot of the dioramas and everything in train modeling, but they do have a lot of terrain. They've got a lot of trees, they got a lot of mountains, they got a lot of all kinds of stuff like that. Anybody know? I mean,
as somebody who's looked at that stuff before, poorly.
Okay.
Yeah. Trains are usually on a much smaller scale, except for some of the largest stuff. Sometimes you can get those kind of tree things, but
I think I saw that 146th, I believe, or 148th was the actual scale
for
Star Wars Legion.
Okay.
Yeah, so because I know the models themselves were supposed to be 32 millimeter.
32 millimeter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the
infantry
actual model scale
bases,
is 30,
yeah.
I think, but and then their bases are.
But so if you want to compare that
neighborhood,
to other established war games, I think it's a little bit bigger than what you would expect from Warhammer 40K.
No, these guys look big. If you're used to looking at figures on the battlefield, they look big in comparison. Like standing just as tall as a Primaris Marine for the Stormtroopers.
Yeah, I was thinking somewhere between a normal Space Marine and a Primaris
32
Marine.
mil, somewhere in there.
So if you have existing 40K like sci-fi type terrain, it'll still work. I mean, you may have stormtroopers hitting their heads when they walk through the doorways, but as somebody who's 6'6", it's something you learn to deal with.
It's just the wrong emperor.
Yeah. For the emperor means two different things, unfortunately. No, you just might need to scrape all the extra skulls and whatnot off of the GW terrain. But yeah, it should absolutely serve. I think I might actually repurpose a couple of those landing pads, turn it into something for the Forest Moon. But
I've been raiding my bits box, pulling random doors, and like you said, scrape a few skulls off some 40K bits, and you'll find some stuff that
by
works.
A few we mean lots and lots of skulls and Aquillas and other things.
Yeah, it's going to be a great market for anybody who's got a really good 3D printer.
Oh, absolutely.
I've definitely seen people popping up with Kickstarters and stuff like that. The quality doesn't, I don't know, I think you can probably bash together your own terrain that looks a little bit better, but hey, it's available if you're don't want to bother with it. I wouldn't be totally shocked if Fantasy Flight eventually starts putting out a few kits here and there once the game, as I'm sure it takes off like wildfire.
Yeah, that's one thing I was thinking too. Is like that's a perfect market for it because it's something that proprietarily they own the rights to.
Yeah.
They might as well put out some terrain for it.
And you can ensure that it's going to be compatible with your models because the supplier is supplying it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that would be great, but.
And like as we said before, I mean, there are mechanics within the game itself that kind of necessitate having, some kind of terrain, whether it's line of sight blocking or something that provides cover for your troops.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, they have all those tables and charts for the different types of terrain they recommend, but it's nice that they have kind of that diversity. So whatever you happen to have laying on the shelves or whatnot, you can immediately apply over to your Legion game.
So now that we've got a little bit of the release schedule, some of the Wave 1 stuff coming out, and the first couple releases after that, we look at our expectations. What are we thinking is going to be the big hits coming out? What are we concerned about? Josh, what's something that you like about what you've seen so far?
One thing that I like that I've seen about the games so far, and I come at this completely from an X-Wing player perspective. To be quite honest with you, I've really cooled on X-Wing because 14 waves in now through the release or the wave announcement that they made last week, there's a lot of power creep. There's a lot of ships that I don't use anymore that just sit on, like you have ships that you use, or you have stuff that you use that sits on a shelf because you just never put it on the table. I have stuff that sits on a shelf because it's just not that viable competitively in the game anymore. And a lot of that has to do with kind of their business model about how they include upgrade cards in expansions, and you may buy an expansion not for the ship necessarily, but because of the cards that are in it, because they're good for other ships that you own, and especially as the meta in that game shifts about once every 6 months. It doesn't look like Legion is going to be that kind of a game. From everything that we've seen so far, from all of the preview articles and all of the announcements, it looks like all of the upgrade cards that come in an upgrade are either mirrored in a opposing faction upgrade or are specific to that unit. For example, we've seen the preview articles on General Veers and Princess Leia.
Yeah.
It appears, aside from the command cards, which are obviously going to be, specifically for that
they're unique command cards.
They're unique command cards. Mm-hmm. All of the upgrade cards that are the smaller cards are shared. They're in each one. So it's not like I have to buy General Veers and Princess Leia. I can just buy General Veers, and I'm going to get the same content that's the general content that is also in the Princess Leia one. Both the Stormtroopers and the Rebel Troopers, their initial release expansion pack, they both come with grappling hooks and impact grenades. I don't have, it's not like ion grenades in one and impact grenades on the other. And if I want to have the full arsenal available to me, I've got to buy both. Or I've got to go on eBay and I've got to pay a premium to just get that card.
Yeah.
X-Wing is really bad with what I like to kind of call the gotta catch 'em all syndrome. And it doesn't appear that I don't have to do that for Legion. I can go, and if I just want to be an Imperial player, which is what I'm going to do, I don't have to go and buy all the terrorist scum. I don't have to do any of that.
Freedom fighters.
Yeah, the terrorist scum. That's okay. Different points of view. But and I really like that. And, that's one of the things when I was thinking about getting into 40K, that was one of the things that really appealed to me, that if I just want to go and buy one army, all I have to do is I go buy that army, I buy a core rule book that gets revised once every 4 years, and then I go and I buy the codex for that specific army. And that's it. And that's it's a lot easier spending $90 on a couple of books every 4 years than, $150 on 4 expansions every 6 months for X-Wing. So I really like that business model that they have, that I only have to buy the things that I'm actually interested in playing. That's great for me.
Sure, and with being a 40K player for a long time, 95% of the time I'll buy a model because it looks cool and not necessarily because it has great rules. So I can't imagine having to pay $30 just for a card when you don't even care about the the free ship that comes along with it.
Yeah, fingers crossed. No, they'll stick to that model that we've seen, and that'll be the case.
Yeah, and the joke always used to be when looking at X-Wing, talking about the Star Viper when it was released. They packaged it with the auto thrusters card that was really good for a lot of other different ships, but the Star Viper on release wasn't that great of a ship, kind of overcosted. The pilot abilities weren't that great. So the running joke was always you paid $20 for 2 auto thrusters cards, and you got a really nice Star Viper model to go with it. So I'm really glad to see that from what we appear to see right now. Now, who knows what they're going to do 2 years from now with Wave, and I know they're not using waves necessarily, but with Wave 6, 7, when they start adding and expanding the content, who knows what they're going to do then. But from what we see right now, that appears to be like the coolest thing about the game that I'm interested in.
So with the power creep that you mentioned that you've seen in X-Wing, Does that, because I mean, of course, X-Wing released the iconic ships right away. You know, you saw the X-Wing, the TIE Fighter, things like that. Does the progressive power creep kind of ruin those iconic ships competitively?
I wouldn't say it necessarily ruins them, but you don't see a whole lot of T-65s out on the board now because
outside of
they
Biggs
were
or something.
What's that?
Outside of Biggs.
Outside of Biggs, which has now been nerfed. So, but
right.
they've also now started, and one of the big things that everybody's excited about with this Wave 14 announcement that they just made is there's going to be a pack that has some upgrades that allegedly is going to make the T-65 viable again. So there's always this kind of rotation where a ship's released, it's usually pretty good on release, and then 4 or 5 waves come out, and it'll get some help, but then they'll do an expansion pack that addresses fixing these ships. They've had an Imperial Veterans pack that fixed TIE Bombers and TIE Defenders. And then we had Guns for Hire that fixed Star Vipers and K-Fighters. And now we're doing Saw's Renegades that's going to fix T-65s and U-Wings, allegedly. I don't know. There's much help for the U-Wing, but
as far as Legion goes, though, 5 years from now, I don't know what the meta is going to look like, but I still want to see Stormtroopers on the board.
Sure,
I still want Darth Vader to be a viable model.
I don't think you're going to see that just because you have to have certain core elements to your army. I don't think you're going to, and I think it would be very unwise of FFG to power creep certain units, so it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to make my entire army out of war droids now, or snow troopers, or something like that. There's always a risk reward for some of those things, and we see that even with the snow troopers. Yeah, the snow troopers are cool. They got some cool upgrades. The flamethrower is going to be epic.
Oh yeah,
but they can only move speed 1. So there's a trade-off there, a tactical trade-off that you have to make. Who knows how many core units they're going to release, and I mean that as CORPS, not core set. Who knows how many core units we're going to end up with the Imperial faction. But you look at the Star Wars fluff, and really, how many can you make? Shore troopers might be special forces. There's not a whole lot of things in the property, I think, that you can make as core units to fill that 3 core units that you have to have in your army.
Well, of course, it always goes into what are they going to use for source material. Now, it seems like right away they're just mining the original trilogy. They were hesitant to do anything with the prequels in X-Wing, as far as I know.
They haven't done a whole lot with the prequels yet. No, the ARC 170 is in...
it was just kind of reclaimed Clone War technology that the Rebels repurposed.
Basically, and
we see that in this.
Yeah, and they pulled that a little bit out of some of the comic books that started coming out once they started filling in like Poe's parents and stuff like that. Though that all came out of that source material, really. But yeah, so we see some, but there's there's no Naboo N1 fighter. There's no droid tri-fighter in X-Wing.
Yeah.
They haven't really touched the prequel movies. So
yeah, if there's going to be a time jump involved, I think they're going to go forward like they did with the TIE-FOs and things like that. You're going to see First Order resistance troops, those kind of things.
Which isn't to say that there's not space for that in Legion. I mean, the concept of having a clone army on the table is really awesome. I've seen a bunch of folks and talked to a bunch of folks that are really excited over the potential of a droid army with B1 battle droids, droidicas, and all that. And I think droids on staps and all that stuff. I think there's a lot of space, especially in the rules. What we've seen, I really think that there's that kind of space in there.
Let's not sugarcoat this. You just want to get General Jar Jar Binks out there, don't you?
And smash him. If I see a General Jar Jar Binks on the field, I'm going to take an ATSD and I'm just going to step on him. That's all I'm going to do.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see the Gungan faction army, if not to avoid the war crimes that eventually come because of it. But
out of spite, I'm probably going to make one now.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to make a Gungan army. Whether or not they release rules for it, I will hand sculpt an entire army.
You're going to green stuff an entire Gungan army, and you're not going to play it. You're just going to sit it over there on the table edge just to taunt me.
Don't think I won't do it.
I know. Get out of my head, John. Get out of my head.
Flying behind a T-47 hooked to a tow cable, knocking people over. Oh, man.
So, Matt, what's one thing that you're looking forward?
The things that I'm most excited about right now for Legion is the upgrade system. I think it's a really elegant, simple way to do it. Used to before just writing out what your unit might have, and usually for those kind of the tabletop battle games, you would have like, oh, I've got a unit of like heavy weapon troopers. I've got a unit of like regular tactical troops, those kind of things. But with the cards that you're able to get, like the rocket launchers and the anti-personnel lasers and things like that, I think it's pretty cool because you can have your basic bog standard core trooper unit and it can just run up the core board, take objectives, and be fine with that. If you're going to actually throw like a 35-point, 45-point upgrade on it, you're changing the role that unit takes just because you're investing so many points in it. I mean, some of them are just as expensive as the unit as a whole. So if you want to maximize the use of your rocket launcher, guess what? You got to reload. So one of your 2 actions is going to be dedicated to running that rocket launcher. So you might have them run up the board a little early to make sure they're in range of everything, and then they just sit behind cover, and then they're using their rocket launcher and reaching out instead of running around. Because if you're running them at each turn, then you're not getting the most out of your upgrades.
So
yeah,
which weapon of the upgrades are you looking forward to the most?
Oh, I'm going to be playing them all. Definitely vehicles are going to be a concern early on, so I'm sure a lot of people. I'm going to be playing both Imperial and Rebels just because I want to have the opposite faction for whoever I might play. But definitely, I'm planning 3 troop units for each of the lists. 2 of them with anti-vehicle, either the ion cannons or the rocket launcher, and the other one with the anti-personnel laser. Although I might drop that just to keep a more mobile force. But troopers die like crazy just from the demos that we've seen, so it'll be interesting to see if they can actually survive to take the objectives, or if you need to, go out there with other units that are a little bit more hardy.
That's a good answer. You're wrong. The correct answer was flamethrower.
Oh, flamethrower.
That was the answer.
Right on the tip of my tongue. I had it.
The correct answer is always flamethrower.
When in doubt, go with the flamethrower. I mean, who's going to complain about an ATRT with a flamethrower?
No.
I mean, unless you're on the receiving end of the ATRT, then you want to have a few
unfortunately, until they make the ATRTs like as part of the required building requirements for your lists, which is 3 of the core units and then 1 commander. Cool, but in the meantime, hey, you got to spend these points on these troops, so why not, maximize their potential?
Absolutely. I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most would have to be the command system, the command card system. It's something that I kind of liked about bolt action.
You can't see it, but Josh is just wincing in pain right now.
This has been a point of contention between the 2 of us.
Yeah.
I played a little bit of bolt action and 40K, and one thing that I liked about bolt action is the fact that it's not like you put all your men on the table, your opponent does, and then they shoot you with everything they have, and then you pick up half your models. That's a really poor way to start a game, and
doesn't feel good. Right
when
away.
You take the time and 40K, the money that you invest in some of these models, the time you do take to paint them, you want them to actually do something, and when you never get a chance to actually do anything with it because you're just picking it up and put it right back in the box, it kind of ruins the fun of it. And at least with bolt action, you have random activation. So every unit has a token. You put them in a bag. Somebody draws whoever's colored dice it is. That's who goes first. You pick a unit to go. That might be a little bit too random.
Yeah.
So I like the aspect.
Well, good news, John.
Well, yeah. So Legion kind of bridged that gap a little bit by having a activation system where you can kind of gamble against your opponent, play a command card. Whoever has the lowest number of actions on that command card, they get to go first. Mm-hmm. And I like that because if you got one unit that you absolutely need to have go before your opponent, you can, draw that one action card and hope that they didn't do the same thing. But either way, I mean, there's ways to mitigate just the randomness of activation. Now, Josh, I know you're probably biting your tongue over here. Why does that upset you so much?
I hate it. It's the one thing, like with the power of a million burning suns, I hate.
Let the hate flow through you.
I'm about to. I hate everything about the command and control system in this game just because it's not. And I hate to be this guy. And it is probably the only time you're ever going to hear me say it. But it doesn't make it. It's not real. It doesn't make any sense. Like. Game systems, when you're designing a game, a mechanic in a game should do one of 2 things. It should simulate something in real life, like in bolt action, or it should explain. There should be at least a good explanation as to why this mechanic exists.
Oh, and it does both of those things, so that's perfect.
Well, you look at bolt action, and if you look historically at World War II, there was really no way up until about like mid 1944 for infantry to talk to tanks, to talk to they operated on completely different radio systems. One was AM, one was FM. There was no coordination. So when you talk about bolt action and you say that, okay, it's random. Okay, now this guy goes. Now this guy goes. Now this guy goes. That's actually an accurate representation of how command and control, at least on the platoon and company level, kind of worked in World War II. That makes sense. Okay, or if you look at like BattleTech, you got a giant 100-foot or you got a giant 100-ton stompy robot with enough weaponry on it to level a city block. Okay, well, if we all had that robot firing all those weapons every single turn, it'd be a very short game. So inside of the fluff in BattleTech, you have the heat mechanic, where weapons generate heat, and so now what that does is that makes you make decisions about, well, with this range and this and this and that, and how much I moved, how much heat you're willing to generate per round to fire all of these weapons.
Yeah, it becomes a risk-reward mechanic.
Right, and you can't just alpha strike every single round, otherwise you're going to blow up your mech. And I look at the command and control, and not just the command cards, but also the long-range comlink upgrade. It makes no sense to me. Okay, I understand long-range comlinks, but if you look within the fluff in Star Wars, because that's what we're playing out here, right? We're playing out, the Battle of Endor. We're playing out the Battle of Scarif, the beach assault. The guys can talk to each other with their helmets.
Oh yeah, because they paid the 5 points for their upgrade.
But I mean, you look at the mechanic of the long range comlink. It lets you talk to units further than range 3. Mm-hmm. Range 3 on this board is like 150 feet. You're trying to tell me, even in a galaxy a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, that they can't talk to each other? They can fly through hyperspace, but you can't talk on the radio to somebody that's 150 feet away without a special upgrade? I mean, the comlink that Luke had, it was just a personal comlink, and he could talk all the way through the Death Star to C-3PO. You telling me? I mean, it's a gamey mechanic. It's something that's in there because a developer said, well, we need to have a mechanic for this. But it doesn't make any sense this is a squad-size, platoon-size game, right? Uh-huh. You telling me that a platoon can't talk to itself without special upgrades? It's nonsensical. Julius Caesar had a battle line 1/4 of a mile wide, and he could talk from one end of it to the other, or at least communicate vague hints using nothing but horns and flags. I mean, I hate it. It doesn't make any sense.
So I think you might be focusing a little bit too much on are they within range or without? So they still get to do their activation tokens. It just may not be in the order you originally hoped.
Sure, but I mean, and again, I don't want to be real life guy, but if you look at...
Then don't be that guy.
You look at modern armies, and I think that's probably the closest to analog now to what's going on in Iraq, Afghanistan, what have you. These guys all have microphones and they all have radios, and each person is in contact with each other person. It's not a range thing. You've got to be miles away to not be able to talk to armor, artillery, air power.
That is a fully equipped and functional army. Not everybody, especially the rebellion, piecing together crap that was left over from a war 30 years ago.
So you know what? Make that a mechanic that
as a rebel
player has
to
deal with. Okay, and I'm not a fan of I can only issue orders to 3 of my guys.
Because that's your lieutenant stepping. Okay, Alpha Squad, Bravo Squad, we're gonna execute Plan Delta Sigma 3. Go.
I think you gotta.
And meanwhile, everybody else is doing their thing.
Do whatever you want, whenever.
No, they've got their standing orders.
You have to suspend some level of disbelief, just because of the fact that number 1, it's a game. Number 2, there's a lot of elements that go into it. I mean, when you're on Hoth, you have to imagine maybe there's a snowstorm. Maybe you can't, reach communications out that far. If you're on Endor, you might have tree interference.
With all the asteroid activity
you might have
in
some
the system.
Ewok pulling on your communications cables. Who knows?
So,
I mean, you've been in the military. You know how communications can break down
I know.
very
Yes,
quickly.
it can break down, but I just how it's supposed to work. And yes, no plan
How
survives
it's supposed
contact
to
with
work,
the enemy.
okay.
But it just strikes me as one of those things that they wanted another layer of strategy, and it wasn't that well thought out. The common upgrade cards. It's like, okay, you can assign units, you can assign orders to one unit. Okay, so I want to make sure my ATRT goes, so my commander goes into the pile. You telling me the commander? I mean, for every turn, the commander should be able to at least issue orders to himself and one other unit. I would have liked to have seen a system. I don't mind there being a mechanic for command and control. That's not the thing. I would have liked to have seen something that was more, okay, your army gets 2 activations per turn. Your commander gets to add an additional 2 to that. And depending on what commander you bring, General Veer, Darth Vader is a very choppy person.
We could very well see that. We
could.
The commander slot is wide open for the future.
And again, this is speculation with what we see right now.
Yeah.
But from what we see of this, of what we've seen of the Let's Play videos and the preview articles, it's not that. Choosing Veers as my commander over Vader as my commander, it's like, well, do I want the buff bot commander or do I want the choppy commander? Do I want a commander that's 95 points or do I want one that's 200? Veers should be able to control more people than Darth Vader, because Veers is a battlefield commander and Darth Vader is just kind of a really choppy, angry dude.
I swear, at one point, I thought I saw your eyes turn red, and I thought you were.
He was fully sniffing out.
I really thought he was going to start choking me.
No, you guys are
I think we can all agree that we probably need to get like a ton of games in with this and just play with the system.
Yeah. I'm gonna hold any kind of judgment on that. I think it's a cool concept. I understand what you're saying about the communication range, but it's a mechanic that I think that we just need to get a few games under our belt before we
see if it actually
really,
And I'm fully willing to admit that we may play the game and I go, oh, okay, I get it. I kind of like this strategy.
We need to mark this today, and we'll check back in a month.
But when I just look at the mechanic on its face, I don't like it. It just seems overly gamey.
You're right. I hate
you're
when
welcome
games of flying jet bikes don't seem realistic.
Yeah, no, that's ridiculous.
But I'm not even talking about realism in the real world sense. I'm talking about the kind of stuff that we've seen. You look at Rogue One, and I don't want to belabor the point, but you had a multi-pronged attack with guys in a tower and guys all over a beach, and they could all talk to each other.
But they couldn't talk to the people in space.
Yes, they could once they.
Once they paid for their upgrade.
But
points.
that was okay. Well,
that's what it boils down to. You got to pay the points.
Well, when we institute orbital bombardment into this game, which, oh dear God, please.
Oh yeah. Sure.
It seems like Veers kind of has that mechanic. It looks like, or something along the lines of that. He's got a mechanic where it lets you throw, I think it's 3 or 4 red dice right off the bat. Like once per game. Yeah.
I like that.
I don't have the card in front of me, but
he seems spicy.
Nobody does.
Yeah.
Nobody has the card in front of them. Well, some people in Minnesota might.
Or Australia. Yeah. Lucky them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're snowed in right now anyways. So Matt, what's one thing that you're a little hesitant about the game?
I'm kind of worried. So Armada, when it came out, there was a real lack of content coming out of the pipe from it, and it really killed the game off, at least for us and our community that was playing it. It looks like they're addressing that, but it is still a big concern of mine that basically we're going to have the core set, we're going to have Veers, Leia, and those extra troop options. We don't know what else is coming, though. I don't know if this is calculated on Fantasy Flight's behalf for their marketing. They don't want to overwhelm people with all these things. I have heard that they're planning releases every month for the first year, which would be great, especially if they're really quality stuff that people are excited about. I'd love to see, like we said, the Shore Troopers, maybe some Tauntaun Cavalry, something like that. My fondest hope is the actually rebuilt speeders from The Last Jedi before they got all stripped out. I think that'd be super cool. But we just don't know what's coming out. And that people are going to get tired of seeing the same stuff on the table really quick. After, a dozen games, they're like, okay, more stormtroopers, more ATRTs.
Speeder bikes against an ATRT.
I've seen this battle. Yeah, let's roll the dice. But So some diversity in what's coming out, I'm really anxious for. Adding another commander, I think, is really huge, and I'm glad they're doing that. And I'm hoping they're going to add a third one before too long, just so we can. It seems the commanders can really change up the way the lists play.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm looking forward to the most, because I really think that, having the Empire and having the Rebels being the only two factions right away is restrictive enough. But yeah, if you've got two armies that are playing the exact same way, facing against each other, from a casual standpoint, I guess it's okay. But from a competitive standpoint, I mean, nobody wants to go to a tournament where there's only two different kind of lists.
Yeah, for sure. Is that your biggest concern right now?
Yeah, that's probably my biggest concern. And yeah, just like I'd like to be able to have another faction, whether it's scum and villainy like you saw in X-Wing, or
I hope they go further than just one. Dump everything in here.
Yeah, I want to see Mandalorians.
Oh, God,
I want to see the Trade Federation, things like that. But then, of course, are they going to rope those into existing factions? Are we going to see
an actual Hutt cartel faction? Would be really sweet.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and
without going into the
one of the things I've seen as I've plumbed Reddit and the forums and everything, people are like, well, the Hutts don't have an army. But you look at the scale of the game, and again, it's a platoon-sized game.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Hutts have like 30 guys laying around. They had enough guys on Jabba's sail barge to put on the table.
No, you have your Deveronians and your Weequays and whatever running around.
I don't think anybody's off the table as far as this.
No.
You could have a Black Sun unit. You could. It all depends on how far really I think Disney is going to let them go in mining the old EU. We're seeing a little bit of that now with some stuff in X-Wing. The assault gunboat was in the TIE Fighter game.
Oh yeah,
was in the TIE Fighter game, and I don't think it really had many other. After Disney went and dumped the EU, I don't think there were very many places where you saw gunboats, if at all, and they were allowed to. FFG was allowed to put it out, which was one of the most anticipated ships in the game since I can remember playing it. So it all depends on how much Disney is going to let them go into the depths of the EU, or how much they're going to flesh out, say if there's a Mandalorian faction, are we going to see, how much Mandalorian gear and tech
all the
have
different
we seen,
houses,
So my one thing that kind of goes along with that is I really enjoy the narrative aspect of the gaming, probably more than the competitive part of it. I kind of like being able to forge my own narrative, have my own army, and kind of create my own backstory for my characters.
And hop around in the meadow with the other fluff bunnies.
Exactly, but you can't really do that when you only have Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia to choose from. I want a generic rebel general, or I want a generic General Veers, but
you want your Space Marine captain that you can name and
exactly, yeah. So I'd like to see them move into a better narrative gaming.
They're never going to do that, right?
There's a lot of space for it, though. I mean,
you've got
the Heroes of the Artillery cluster with X-Wing, and
I'm
sure we're going to see some
some
fan cooked up stuff.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if it's quality, who cares who it's by?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That's kind of the thing. Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, it's a character-driven narrative. All these people have names. Even random guy sitting on the bar stool in Mos Eisley, he's got a name. He's got a backstory. He's going to pop up in Rogue One. Guess what? But having Lieutenant Steven Starkiller, your own little named guy, outside of like a Corellian Conflict, like little campaign book they put together, I don't know if they'll just have generic, Hoth Rebel Lieutenant. Who's going to be excited for that?
But even
except you, John.
Well, even if it's something that's not like directly FFG supported, as long as it's something that they leave you, a little bit of room to work with to, maybe not adjust the stats or anything like that, but just some generic characters that you can kind of mold, however you want to make them.
You want kind of like a Necromunda style, or Battle Company, something like that for like The Hobbit, but where you can develop characters and
something along the lines of that.
That'd be cool. I mean, they have the Imperial Assault campaign game. You can do that.
The game's already out. Look, I'm looking forward. Okay, I'm not trying to look back.
Okay. So don't tell me what I already have. Tell me. I'll tell you what I want.
Speaking of looking forward, Josh, what's one thing that you're really looking forward to with this?
Flamethrowers.
Good answer. See,
flamethrowers. See, the answer is always flamethrowers.
Flamethrowers.
Yeah. I even from a mechanical standpoint in the game, that you
two
add
black dice
two black dice for every
yeah.
troop you're shooting it at. it gives you like tactically it gives you an impetus to go find the biggest group of infantry and just flame them out, because a flamethrower is not as effective if you're only shooting at 2 guys than if you're shooting at 7.
I think I mentioned earlier about how every troop unit should probably be loaded for anti-vehicle stuff early. This is part of the reason.
Well, I mean, but eventually we're going to have the snow troopers, and they're going to have flamethrowers. So, I can't wait, flamethrowers.
Prepare for the flamethrower heavy meta.
Right.
Oh man, is that going to be the thing?
Have I mentioned in
how
40K,
many flamethrowers can I get in the list? This is what we're doing.
It's no mistake in 40K that my favorite chapter is the salamanders. I mean, I'm just saying. Okay, flamethrowers.
I thought you just like green.
No, well, there's that too.
Okay.
Usually when it's in my pocket. But,
yeah. What's that like?
I don't know.
So Matt, what's one thing you're really hoping for in this game?
I mean, I'm excited for them to add more factions, obviously. I'm looking forward to the tournaments, really. I kind of want to travel for this one. I haven't done that since like Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition, but this is kind of the game I'm going to be staking my claim on and saying, I want to get good at this. I want to have fun with this. I want to get the most out of this game and hobby as possible. So I'll be looking to go to Worlds each year if I can swing it. Any other like the Gen Cons or Adepticon. We're lucky to have Las Vegas Open out here. I'm sure they'll be doing a Legion event probably next year. So that is I want to be competitive and have a lot of fun with this game. I would like to meet more people in the community, and because that was something that was always exciting about traveling, is meeting people from other places and how they play the game, different metas.
So. The great thing about, I think, Star Wars with this IP is that it's not as hard to get into as something like Warhammer 40K, because with X-Wing, I think a lot of people who were casual gamers or board gamers kind of came over to it, and that might have been like a good gateway drug to wargaming in general. This may be the full on addiction that everyone leads to.
Yeah, and I mean with X-Wing, with 40K, you've got 30 years of history that you've got to catch up on, and all of the changes, and obviously you've got to choose a faction, and there's 13, 14, something like that, playable factions.
There's way more than that.
X-Wing though, because of you've got to catch up. So if you're trying to get an X-Wing right now, you've got 13 waves of ships you need to buy because you got to catch them all. And that's a significant outlay of money.
But even for, let's fast forward this a few years. I think this is still going to be, assuming that everything stays on an even slate and there isn't a power creep, this is probably one of the easiest, most accessible games to get into just monetarily wise, too. I mean, especially if you can find somebody split some core sets with. Maybe 1 or 2 extra troop units, but you each buy the core, you trade back and forth. You got a Rebel player, you got an Imperial player. $90, you're in the game, and you've got a full size everything required to play.
And that's what I'm doing on launch. I found another player here in the community. He wants to play terrorists. I'm going to play the good guys,
freedom fighters.
Yeah, and so my initial outlay for the game is a core set. I'm going to take his Imperials and an ATST. And that's there it is.
You've got a really good starting force right there.
That's my initial outlay for the game. I don't have to feel like I have to go and buy, Rebel Troopers and Snow Speeders and ATRTs and all this other stuff. So I think that's great.
John, I think you're going a little more nuts like I am with this.
I'm going to bring balance to the force. I'm going to play both, or whatever. I got to paint all of them. Let's be real.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just paint half a faction and sit there and stare at all the stormtroopers and then be like, well, I'm just going to leave them on the table. No, I'm going to paint everything. So I'm looking forward to playing both factions. Which one I'm most excited about? Oh man, I'm leading towards the Rebels. ATRTs and stuff like that. And,
the T-47s are what sold me.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're one of my favorite vehicles from the original trilogy. But then ATSTs, so I've got excuses to play both factions. I think everybody's excited for ATSTs.
So we've heard from FFG that they're looking at doing about 800 points for the tournament level or for competitive play.
Right.
And within the box itself, you're not getting close to that.
You're getting fairly close. You're looking at about 650 with reasonable amounts of upgrades without just cramming every maximum point on there for a playable force. So you could get pretty close, maybe add another troop box if you're just getting one core set and you want to pick one side. And then like a speeder bike box or another ATRT or something like that, and you're at a solid 800 there.
But that might not be what you want for your ideal competitive list.
Oh, no, absolutely not. That's just kind of getting you in the door. What's going to be competitive? Wow, that's going to take, a lot of reps. I'm sure people are out there already theoretically in a vacuum. Here, this is going to be the optimum list. This is the most amount of flamethrowers you can get on the table right now.
So from what you've seen so far, that's coming out there, that first wave one, what are you putting together for the 800-point list?
Oh, mine's going to be basically, I started talking about it earlier, the 3 troops with their weapon upgrades. Luke with, what is it? The one that gives him the dodge token in there, plus I'm going to be doing the 2 T-47s, probably with the ground buzzers on there. And that's going to get me close to 800 points. So that's kind of what I'm looking at, mostly because I want to play around with the flying units.
All right, Josh. Well, since we already know you're playing Empire, what Imperial factions are you bringing out there?
Well, what I've got, and I'm pulling it up on Battlescribe right now just to see everything that I've got, just to make sure I can name all the upgrades correctly. I've got Vader with Force Reflexes, which is the dodge token, and the saber throw. That comes in about 225 points.
You need
so from what I've seen so far, saber throw seems like it's like you have to have it.
It's an auto include, pretty much. And then also, especially with Vader with only moving at a speed 1. You need that force reflexes because if he's going to be out in the open and getting shot at, you want to have at least the ability to maybe deflect some of that back. And
they also do have the deflect ability on them Jedi.
But you have to have the dodge token to have that enabled.
Well, if you're going to put like a third of your points in your army into one,
there's that too.
You probably want to keep them alive a little while.
And speaking of putting a third of my points into one unit in the army, you're also putting out kind of a light ATST.
A light ATST.
Well, I mean, you're
not maximizing every one of those hard points. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, if you were to completely tool that thing up, you're looking at close to 300, 350
close
points.
To 300.
The build I've got right now is the twin light blaster cannon upgrade, long range comm links, because apparently you need to be able to talk more than 300 meters away.
Or you could just hang out with Vader. That's fine too.
Yeah, that too. I could try not to step on him. Maybe he could force throw me at something across the battlefield. Can we do that?
A little ATST fastball special.
Well, we saw in Rebels that he could pick them up. So, anyways, and then the General Weiss upgrade, which maybe I don't need with the Arsenal keyword Arsenal 2, but. And then I've got 3 units of Stormtroopers with the extra Stormtrooper and then the DLT-19 Stormtrooper.
Oh, nice.
I may put on one of the rockets on one of them.
I think that would serve you well.
Which, it might. And then 1 unit of speeder bikes with just the long-range comm link, because I don't think there's really a whole lot of there's no extra hard points on the speeder bikes.
No, they just get the comm upgrade.
It's just the
they've
comm
got
link.
a really good gun for that unit on there anyway. So.
And unlike the you can shoot the scout pistol out of arc.
Yeah.
You're not committed to using that to shoot in arc.
I mean, you're better off doing that, but you can split fire if you need to.
I mean, that gets me to, I think, like 797 points. Yeah.
Oh, so you're going for that blue-red player's pick.
Sure, yeah. I personally, just looking at that doesn't seem like a whole lot. And I know it's about trying to make sure you've got to weigh putting upgrades on this and on that. Looking at just the costing of an ATST, man, I don't know if 800 points is the sweet spot for this game.
And that very well could be.
1,000 might be better, I think. You can kind of flesh your units out a little bit. But bringing, hey, I'm putting just this ATST on the board with no upgrades, that doesn't really seem... It's a decision. You got to make that decision.
It'll probably make the gameplay faster, having 800 points, but I see what you mean, though. I think it's also preventing people from throwing out like 2 ATSTs at a time, or...
That can be tough to deal with. They do include rules in the rulebook for if you want to do a grand army, which is 1,600 points. But we could see something like in 40K where the community kind of votes, and some of the bigger tournaments or whatever, if they're not official FFG tournaments, they'll say, okay, we're doing 1,200 points, and that might be the accepted total that kind of gets around.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say the problem necessarily with that, but most of the tournaments that are major tournaments out there are some sort of FFG tournament.
Yeah.
Especially now, Nova Open is the U.S. Nationals. You've had your store and regional championships, and for FFG's organized play, that store, regional, national, world thing, that's where it's at, as opposed to Nova Open for 40K or LVO here locally. I don't know if that doesn't feed into the national ladder of competitions necessarily.
Yeah, I'm actually going up to Gamma, which usually gets me pretty good access to the Fantasy Flight guys. That's one of the things I'm going to be asking them, is that there's going to be multiple tournament format points that are going to be supported for organized play, or is it just going to be this locked-in 800 points? Because I could see where there'd be, you want to play with more stuff on the table, get all your toys out.
Well, I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most as far as building the list, I really want to get some troops on the board. I'm looking at those rebel
bunch of
rebel
dudes
troop
out
models.
there.
Yeah, not to go as far as as you say in 40K, the MSU spam. I'm not trying to do that necessarily, but I think with the objectives being how you win games. Sure, it's great to be able to blow somebody off the board with 2 ATSTs or a bunch of ATRTs, but just having 5-6 units on the board, and they haven't said anything about having a maximum number of core units.
No, they just have the minimum, but I haven't seen anything for maximums at all.
So I mean, if you throw 50, 60 troopers on the board, Darth Vader can probably wipe out a unit a turn, but does he have enough time to get across the board?
He can only choke so many people. Exactly. I mean, he's just a man, just a robot man.
Well, and there's, like you said, troopers die quickly. If this is a capture and hold objective-based kind of game, those 3 core units, you may be sitting there with your ATST stomping around and your speeder bike zipping around, but if you've got if your 3 dudes are gone, your 3 units of dudes are gone, there's no way to go ahead and get in there and get that objective.
Well, if you go into it with the same attitude that the Russian military had in World War II, you just throw more troops at them than they have the means to choke them. And
well, does anybody know if the commissar hat will fit Darth Vader's helmet?
Well, because Darth Vader, one of his force abilities that he has,
he kills his own guys, right? Yeah, that's one of the things. That's if I'm going to kit bash anything together in this game, I am definitely finding a 40K commissar hat and I'm going to smack it on my Darth Vader.
I probably have a couple extra ones.
Can I borrow one? Yeah. Can I do that? That's going to be that's going to be a lot of fun.
Pretty sure Darth Vader was choking out people on command bridges well before the commissars existed. So maybe you should put Darth Vader helmets on your commissars, is what I'm saying.
But then I'd have to go and buy 40K stuff.
Okay, well, let's not do that. Yeah. Let's focus on Legion.
Yeah. I probably have enough, commissar hats for everyone. But you really want to put some 40K gear on your Darth Vader.
And I know there's just people in the community, because I've seen people get very ragey when you just compare Legion to 40K. Man, if I put a Darth Vader on there with some piece of 40K kit and just watch people's head explode, troll level maximum.
Just throw more skulls on your ATST, things like that.
Like what you need to do is you need to find there's a miniature Star Trek game, right?
Oh yeah, Star Trek Attack Wing, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know if there's one that actually has the ground combat units, but if you can find
actually they do. The RPG that came out from Modifius has
same
a
scale?
little tactical. It's pretty close. I want to say it's 28-30 millimeters.
Just take a lightsaber off of one of the models and put it on Captain Kirk or Spock, and just bring him out here's my Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
just bring it to some major tournament where some neckbeard just gets triggered.
Here's my red shirt squad.
That sounds like an expensive troll, but
fun.
Well, that about does it here for the Legion Outrider podcast. I want to thank you two for joining me here today for the podcast.
Wait, that's it?
That's it for today. But
that's all you get for $5, man.
Okay. Well, the first time was always the most special. So.
They always come back for more, though. Don't worry. 2 weeks from now, we'll be doing our follow-up, presuming, we don't get too much rage emails about the Star Trek joke.
Death threats, yeah.
But we're going to try to do this every 2 weeks. Next time, we'll have the physical copy of the demo copy of the game, hopefully.
Yeah, and, that would be absolutely wizard.
We can put some models on the table, check the stuff out for ourselves while we're actually doing the next podcast. And in the meantime, if you want to check out some of our hobby progress or get in contact with us, send us some questions, hate mail, whatever, how can they get a hold of us, Josh?
Not the hate mail, just keep that to yourself.
Not the hate
That's
mail.
fine.
Well, we have
Josh feeds off mail, actually.
Well, you can reach us at our email account. We have if you prefer email, we have it's legionoutriders@gmail.com. If you want to find us on the Facey page, it's facebook.com/legionoutriders. And if you're on the Twitter, it is at Legion Outriders. That's our Twitter handle. And like John just said,
easy.
Yeah, and like John just said, we're not going to be just pushing the goal. We're not just hoping to just push out a podcast, but hopefully you'll see some Let's Plays out of us from that demo kit. I'll be putting up my very poorly painted schemes that I'm going to be looking at, because I know I'm not doing the standard schemes for Star Wars for my heroic
Pink Hello Kitty stormtroopers incoming.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to be putting all of that up there too. We're trying to. We've got our plan is to push a lot of different content on this this whole podcast thing. So,
John, do you have your own Twitter account so people can see somebody
I
that
actually
can paint
don't.
well?
I didn't pay the 5 points to the Long Range Comm uplink.
Oh,
so
man.
I
I'm sure
don't
we'll get
have
you set up
Twitter,
here soon.
But
Check the show notes.
I'll go ahead and load up any of the hobby progress photos that I have on the Legion Outriders page, so everyone can check that out.
Cool. And you can reach me on @Frontier Gaming Channel. It's, I think, @Frontier Gaming C on Twitter. And I've got my own YouTube channel that I upload things we've been working on Legion here recently, but we also do War Machine, 40K, all that kind of stuff. So you can reach me there.
All right, Outriders. See you in 2 weeks.
You've been listening to the Legion Outriders Podcast.
Only now, at the end, do you understand?
For more from the Outriders, make sure you like us on Twitter @Legion Outriders, subscribe to our Facebook page at facebook.com/Legion Outriders, and make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast. Thanks for listening.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.